Some people pack their bags for a luxury vacation and completely leave their common sense at the dock. Today we are exposing 55 of the absolute dumbest, most mind-numbing cruise ship complaints ever filed by passengers. From travelers demanding the captain turn down the volume of the ocean to guests trying to eat solid ice sculptures. The level of sheer entitlement is honestly breathtaking. Prepare to lose a little faith in humanity. 1. During a spectacular midnight buffet, a VIP guest actually chipped his front tooth and immediately threatened a massive lawsuit. Instead of feeling embarrassed that he tried to take a massive bite out of a decorative ice swan, he blamed the culinary team. His formal grievance stated that the frozen sculpture was dangerously hard and completely lacked flavor. He genuinely thought the solid block of ice was a giant mint display and demanded the cruise line pay his dental bill. 2. Standing on the upper deck during a windy sea day, a gentleman had his expensive custom toupee blown right off his head into the Atlantic. He immediately sprinted to find an officer and demanded they deploy an emergency rescue boat to retrieve his hair. When the crew gently explained they only stopped the massive ship for human emergencies, he threatened to report them for maritime negligence. He legitimately expected a dozen highly trained sailors to risk their lives for a wig. 3. Towel animals are a fun little tradition, but one couple took it as a direct insult. They returned to their cabin to find a towel monkey hanging from the ceiling and immediately called security. They claimed the steward was mocking their physical appearance and demanded the employee be fired on the spot. The staff had to desperately explain that the monkey is just a standard origami design given to thousands of guests. The sheer narcissism required to think a folded piece of cotton is a personal attack against your face is truly unmatched. 4. An angry guest living in a premium balcony suite demanded that the captain turn down the volume of the ocean. She claimed the crashing waves were entirely too loud and were ruining her afternoon naps. She actually suggested the crew install some sort of giant underwater muffler around the hull to make the water splash quietly. It is absolutely baffling that someone books a vacation on the open sea and then gets furious that the water acts like water. Have you ever heard a complaint this mind-numbing in real life? 5. During a spectacular midnight buffet, one passenger became incredibly hostile because the decorative ice swan was melting. They accused the culinary team of serving defective art and demanded they replace it with a fresh one immediately. The head chef had to calmly explain the basic concept of a frozen object sitting in a humid, tropical dining room. This person essentially wanted the laws of thermodynamics suspended just so they could take a perfect picture for their social media. Some folks genuinely live in an alternate reality. 6. Safety is important, but one anxious traveler took it to a hilarious extreme. She yelled at a deck officer because the massive ship did not use blinkers when turning towards a new port. Her logic was that other boats in the open ocean might not know which way the vessel was going, creating a massive traffic hazard. Trying to explain that a 100,000-ton floating resort does not operate like a regular sedan at a four-way stop proved absolutely useless. 7. A furious teenager dragged his father to the help desk to scream about the terrible cell reception in the middle of the Atlantic. They seriously accused the captain of deliberately driving away from the 5G cell towers just to force passengers to buy the onboard internet package. The dad demanded the ship turn around and stay closer to the coastline so his kid could continue playing online video games. You are surrounded by endless, majestic waters, yet you are ready to riot because of a slight lag in your digital fantasy world. 8. Nature puts on a great show at sea, unless there happens to be a cloudy evening. One angry traveler filed a formal demand for compensation because thick clouds blocked the sunset on his anniversary. He told the guest relations manager that the brochure promised a stunning golden hour, and the company failed to deliver on that contract. He honestly felt the ship should have launched flares or projected a fake sun onto the clouds to make up for it. Would you be able to keep a straight face while listening to a grown man yell at the sky? 9. A highly confused tourist was deeply offended that there was no natural sandy beach located on the top deck of the ship. Despite having multiple pools and hot tubs, He felt cheated that the cruise line did not import several tons of actual beach sand for him to walk on. He argued that a tropical vacation is entirely useless without sand between his toes at all times. The engineering disaster of putting a giant heavy sandbox on top of a moving vessel totally escaped his brain. Some people just want the impossible delivered on a silver platter. 10. A man enjoying his breakfast on an open deck called over a manager to report a security breach. He was absolutely livid that a seagull had landed on the railing near his table. He demanded to know why the ship did not have an invisible anti-bird force field or a dedicated sniper to keep unauthorized wildlife away from his bacon. He viewed a wild bird existing outside as a massive failure of the cruise line security team. Imagine having such a fragile ego that a 3-pound bird simply looking at you ruins your entire luxury morning. 11. A passenger stormed the guest relations desk demanding that the lifeboats hanging outside her balcony be immediately dismantled. She argued the bright orange vessels were a complete eyesore and fiercely clashed with her vacation aesthetic. The manager politely explained that maritime law requires emergency equipment to remain attached to the ship. Refusing to back down, the woman suggested the crews simply store the lifeboats in the basement and only bring them out if the boat actually sinks. 12. Passing the equator is a fun maritime milestone, but one guy was absolutely furious when he looked over the railing. He marched up to the bridge demanding a refund because he did not see a giant red line painted across the ocean surface. Convinced the captain was pulling a massive scam, he threatened to call the police for geographic fraud. It takes a truly spectacular level of ignorance to think the entire globe is wrapped in a physical strip of red tape, just like a classroom globe. 13. A wannabe influencer marched to guest services demanding the captain intentionally steer the ship directly into a massive tropical storm. Her reasoning was that clear sunny skies were entirely too boring for her social media aesthetic. She genuinely expected a billion-dollar vessel carrying thousands of lives to risk capsizing just so she could film a dramatic video on the top deck. How disconnected from reality do you have to be to treat a deadly hurricane like a fun photo op? 14. A frustrated mother actually bypassed the guest services desk and tried to knock on the captain's door with a highly specific demand. She wanted the bridge to blast the emergency ship horn purely to wake up her sleeping teenager. Claiming the cabin telephone was simply not loud enough, she felt a deafening sound designed for maritime disasters was the only reasonable alarm clock. Would you be able to keep a straight face while telling a grown woman she cannot use a 150 decibel safety siren to parent her child? 15. Watching dolphins swim alongside the bow is magical, unless they fail to perform up to your exact standards. One angry photographer complained that the wild animals were slacking off because they refused to jump high enough to reach his 10th deck balcony. He legitimately asked the entertainment director to toss some fish overboard to bribe the ocean wildlife into doing synchronized flips. Do you think people like this actually realize the ocean is not a trained circus act? 16. A man lounging by the main pool summoned a deckhand to formally complain about the air quality. He claimed the ocean breeze was way too salty and was leaving a sticky residue on his designer sunglasses. His brilliant solution was to ask the captain to steer the massive vessel into a freshwater lake for the remainder of the afternoon. Navigating a cruise ship out of the Caribbean and into a magical, non-existent tropical lake is apparently a reasonable request for some tourists. 17. During a packed evening performance in the main theater, a woman stood up and shouted for the cast to freeze. She needed to use the restroom and felt the live singers were incredibly disrespectful for continuing the musical without her. After returning to her seat, she demanded the performers rewind the show by 10 minutes so she could catch up on the plot. Trying to treat a live stage production like a streaming video you can just pause is honestly hilarious. 18. A couple booking a last-minute deal somehow failed to read the destination and packed entirely for the Bahamas. Upon arriving in Alaska, the wife was shivering in her swimsuit and furiously demanded the cruise line turn up the outdoor heating system. She expected the crew to magically warm up the frozen glaciers so she could comfortably sunbathe on the upper deck. Have you ever witnessed a tourist completely ignore reality just to stick to their original vacation outfit? 19. Nighttime cruising is normally peaceful, but one light sleeper was outraged by the gentle hum of the engine room. Marching down in his pajamas, he demanded the captain simply drop the anchor in the middle of the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean until morning. He completely ignored the fact that stopping a cruise ship in the open sea would delay thousands of people from reaching the next port. The audacity to treat a billion-dollar vessel like a personal hotel room is staggering. 20. A guest on a nature cruise was incredibly upset after listening to a pod of whales through the ship's underwater microphones. He complained to management that the majestic animals were not making the exact sounds he heard in a cartoon he watched as a kid. He seriously accused the crew of playing fake audio tapes, because real whales should obviously squeak like a rubber toy. What is the most ridiculous thing you have ever heard someone complain about? Drop it in the comments. 21. A passenger marched down to guest relations because the ocean looked exactly the same as the day before. They genuinely accused the captain of dropping anchor overnight and faking the engine noise just to save on fuel. When the crew showed them the live GPS tracker proving they traveled hundreds of miles, the guest argued the water lacked variety. Imagine paying thousands for a cruise and getting furiously bored because the sea does not have different colored sections. 22. One highly disappointed gentleman demanded a partial refund after taking an exclusive bridge tour. He was absolutely disgusted that the captain was navigating with modern computers and a small joystick instead of a giant wooden steering wheel. Feeling cheated out of a true maritime experience, he loudly suggested the cruise line install a fake pirate wheel just for the aesthetic. Do you think people watch way too many movies before booking a vacation? 23. A woman marching up to a crew member asked if the captain could pull the ship over because her toddler needed to use the bathroom. She completely ignored the fact that her cabin had a fully functioning toilet just down the hall. Her logic was that her kid preferred doing his business on solid ground and the ship was moving too fast for his comfort. The crew stared in pure disbelief as she pointed at a random distant island and told them to just park the boat right there. It is a cruise ship, Susan, not a minivan on the interstate. 24. During a brief afternoon shower, a furious tourist demanded the deckhands immediately cover the swimming pool with a giant tarp. His reasoning was that the fresh rainwater was ruining the perfectly balanced chlorine levels of the pool water. He legitimately stood in the pouring rain, screaming that the outdoor pool was getting wet. The utter absurdity of trying to protect a giant basin of water from natural water is a level of stupidity that deserves a gold medal. 25. A family rolled a massive cooler onto the ship and immediately dragged it down to the main dining room kitchen. They had brought a completely raw 20-pound turkey from home and demanded the executive chef roast it for their private dinner. When the staff cited strict international health codes, the father accused the cruise line of trying to suppress his family traditions. Who sneaks raw poultry onto a luxury resort just to save a few bucks on an unlimited buffet? 26. Stepping off the ship to explore exotic ports was apparently far too much physical labor for one aggressively lazy couple. They formally complained that the onboard photography studio refused to just Photoshop them in front of famous global landmarks. Their logic was that since they paid for the cruise, they should not be forced to actually walk outside in the heat to get their vacation pictures. It really makes you wonder why these folks even bother leaving their living rooms at all. 27. Live entertainment always draws a huge crowd, yet one woman left the magic show in a fit of pure rage. She cornered the onboard illusionist because he failed to make her husband permanently disappear. While the performer thought it was a playful joke, she was dead serious and demanded he finish the trick so she could enjoy the rest of the voyage single. Would you have laughed out loud or immediately called ship security if you were that poor performing magician? 28. Sweating profusely, a guest complained that the grand staircase was rocking back and forth specifically to make her trip and fall. She completely ignored the obvious fact that the entire ship was navigating through 10-foot ocean swells. Her formal grievance stated the engineering department should stabilize the stairs independently from the rest of the vessel, so she could walk in peace. The sheer entitlement of wanting a stationary staircase on a moving boat is breathtaking. 29. Unlimited food is a major perk, but one teenager took the concept of service way past the absolute limit. He floated to the center of the main pool and started screaming for a waiter to swim out and deliver him a hot slice of pepperoni pizza. When a lifeguard told him no food was allowed in the water, he accused the cruise line of purposely starving him. Expecting a crew member to wade through chest-deep water while balancing a hot plate is just pure delusion. 30. Leaving port is a loud affair, and the ship's massive horn totally ruined one passenger's spiritual morning. She stormed into the main lobby, claiming the blast was highly offensive to the local marine life. Her actual suggestion was that the captain should hire a marine biologist to translate the horn into a friendly whale greeting, so the fish would not feel threatened. It is truly fascinating how some people view a giant mechanical horn as a diplomatic instrument. 31. A gym-goer furiously demanded a refund for his fitness pass because the ship was sailing south while he was running north on the treadmill. He claimed the vessel's forward momentum was completely canceling out his workout and robbing him of his burned calories. The poor personal trainer had to explain high school physics to a grown man who genuinely believed he was just running in place relative to the Earth. Have you ever skipped a workout using logic this completely broken? 32. A woman filed a massive corporate grievance after experiencing the ship's vacuum toilets for the first time. She accused the cruise line of trying to suck her internal organs out through the plumbing and demanded they install a standard porcelain gravity toilet in her cabin. The chief engineer was utterly speechless when she suggested they just drill a simple hole straight through the bottom of the hull so she could flush normally. The sheer danger of her structural engineering idea is absolutely terrifying to even think about. 33. Taking a small, tender boat to shore is standard practice in shallow ports, but one highly entitled family completely lost their minds over it. They outright refused to board the water taxi, claiming they paid for a luxury cruise and would only travel to the island if the captain drove the entire flagship directly onto the sandy beach. They honestly expected the crew to beach a billion-dollar vessel like a tiny rowboat, just so they would not have to walk down a set of exterior stairs. 34. Balcony views are usually stunning, yet one angry guest marched down to guest services to formally complain about the distant horizon. She stated that seeing the natural curvature of the Earth was giving her severe vertigo and demanded the captain sail strictly on flat parts of the ocean. When the staff gently explained that the planet is a sphere, she threatened to leave a terrible review for false advertising. Imagine being so deeply offended by the literal shape of the globe that you ask a sailor to fix it. 35. Midnight cravings hit hard, leading one guy to order a large pepperoni pizza directly to his room. When it arrived perfectly cooked, he aggressively called the kitchen back, completely furious that the pizza was baked. He claimed he wanted a raw, unbaked pie so he could cook it himself, using the heat from his cabin's hairdryer to ensure maximum freshness. The culinary team was left completely stunned by this ridiculous culinary disrespect. Would you trust this man to safely prepare his own meals in any capacity whatsoever? 36. Standing on the top deck while cruising at 20 knots creates a strong breeze, which completely ruined one passenger's afternoon cigar. He stormed the bridge, demanding the captain instantly deploy the ship's giant sails to block the wind. After being informed that modern cruise ships are powered by massive diesel engines and do not actually have canvas sails, he accused the crew of hiding them to save money. This guy was entirely ready to argue maritime engineering with a seasoned captain just to smoke in total peace. 37. We have a guy who filed a massive grievance because he thought the cruise line literally stole an hour of his life. As the ship sailed east and crossed into a new time zone, the clocks jumped forward. This absolute genius demanded a prorated refund for the lost 60 minutes of his vacation. He accused the captain of speeding through the ocean just to cut the trip short and save money on food. Do you think people this oblivious should even be allowed to hold a passport? Let me know what you think down below. 38. Swimming in the middle of the sea is a thrill, unless you are the woman who demanded the crew instantly drain the ocean. She dropped her cheap plastic sunglasses over the railing and fully expected the captain to empty the water around the ship so a diver could easily walk down and retrieve them. She even suggested they just use a giant vacuum to temporarily move the Atlantic out of the way. It is an absolute miracle that someone this detached from reality manages to survive daily life. 39. An Alaskan scenic cruising day was ruined for one guy who apparently expected a giant budget action movie. He actually complained that the captain safely steered around the floating ice instead of smashing straight through it like some deranged iceberg cowboy. Basically, this man paid for peaceful scenery and got mad because nobody risked the entire ship for his personal entertainment. 40. Walking from the bow to the stern can take a few minutes, prompting a furious complaint from a spectacularly lazy guest. He was incredibly angry that the front of the ship reached the destination a full minute before his cabin located at the very back. He demanded a prorated discount for the 60 seconds he spent waiting for his section of the boat to cross the imaginary finish line. Do you think people who complain about things like this actually enjoy their lives at all? 41. A woman demanded a full refund from the photo desk because the printed pictures made her look 10 years older than her previous vacation. She completely ignored the glaring fact that her last cruise took place literally a decade ago. Instead of accepting the natural passage of time, she furiously accused the photographer of using a defective camera lens specifically designed to add wrinkles to her face. She honestly expected the cruise line to fire the poor employee and pay for a professional retouching service to restore her youth. Have you ever seen someone go to such extreme lengths just to avoid admitting they aged? 42. Keeping up with current events is nice, but one furious gentleman cornered the guest relations manager over the cabin television programming. He was absolutely livid that the satellite feed did not include the local public access channel from his tiny hometown in rural Ohio. Despite being completely surrounded by the Mediterranean Sea, he claimed the ship was purposely cutting him off from watching his neighbor host a weekly gardening show. The sheer entitlement required to think a global maritime satellite network should exclusively cater to a town of 500 people is genuinely mind-boggling. 43. The adult-only solarium is a sacred quiet zone, which completely outraged one highly entitled mother. She marched right past the giant warning signs and demanded the staff let her rowdy 7-year-old jump into the hot tub. Her argument was that her son was incredibly gifted, possessed a very mature vocabulary for his age, and therefore qualified as a grown-up under maritime guidelines. When security politely escorted them out, she accused the entire company of aggressively discriminating against child geniuses. Why do some parents genuinely believe standard rules simply do not apply to their precious kids? 44. Hitting the jackpot is the ultimate dream, but one guy treated the onboard casino like an absolute financial guarantee. After quickly losing a couple of $100s at the blackjack table, he marched directly to the pit boss and demanded all his cash back. His logic was that since he already paid a premium price for his balcony suite, the cruise line was legally obligated to let him win enough to cover his extensive bar tab. He even filed a formal grievance stating the dealer was being extremely uncooperative by not warning him which cards were coming out of the shoe next. 45. Grabbing a cold cocktail by the pool turned into a massive confrontation when a guest fiercely complained about the ice cubes. She was deeply offended that the ice floating in her margarita was entirely clear, claiming it looked way too artificial and must be made of plastic. The bartender spent 10 minutes trying to explain that commercial freezing machines simply remove air bubbles to create crystal-clear cubes. Refusing to listen to basic science, she demanded they use cloudy ice from a regular home freezer so her drink would feel far more authentic to her palate. 46. Interacting with an international crew is usually a massive highlight for travelers, yet one passenger found it highly insulting. He filed a bizarre written complaint stating that his dining room waiter was being overly arrogant by speaking 4 different languages fluently. This guy actually felt deeply insecure that the staff member could effortlessly switch between Spanish, French, and English to help other surrounding tables. He suggested the cruise line strictly limit employees to knowing only one language so guests would not feel intellectually inferior during their evening dinner service. 47. Missing the departure time is a nightmare, but one couple completely blamed the captain for their own terrible time management. They strolled onto the pier a full hour after the gangway was pulled and were absolutely shocked that the massive vessel had actually left without them. In their furious emails to corporate, they argued that holding premium drink packages meant the entire itinerary should have been paused while they finished shopping for souvenirs. Expecting thousands of people to sit waiting just because you wanted to buy a cheap magnet is premium delusion. What would you say to these folks if you were the captain? 48. Excellent housekeeping is a staple of luxury travel, but one guest actually complained that his room steward was way too good at his job. The man was highly upset that his bed was made with perfectly tight corners every single morning while he was away at breakfast. He stated the pristine setup made him feel incredibly guilty whenever he wanted to crawl back in for a messy afternoon nap. This guy literally demanded the staff leave his blanket slightly wrinkled so he would not experience any emotional distress before going to sleep. 49. Dressing up for formal night is a long-standing tradition that one extremely stubborn traveler completely refused to understand. He showed up to the elegant main dining room wearing a tailored tuxedo paired with bright yellow rubber flip-flops. When the maitre d' politely denied him entry for violating the strict footwear policy, the man erupted in total anger. He loudly argued that because his sandals were purchased at a high-end designer store, they legally counted as formal wear. Trying to debate the elegance of loud beachwear at a five-star dinner is a wild hill to happily die on. 50. Riding the glass elevators in the main atrium provides a great view, but the background music absolutely ruined one woman's entire day. She marched directly to the customer service desk to report that the instrumental jazz playing in the lift did not match her personal audio tastes. She firmly requested the engineering team rewire the speaker system so she could plug her phone in and force everyone to listen to heavy metal while going to the buffet. The absolute confidence to demand total control over the ship's soundtrack just for a 20-second ride is staggering. 51. A furious passenger stood in the main lobby with a packed beach bag, screaming at the staff to open the doors. Checking her daily itinerary, she was absolutely livid that the captain was purposely skipping the destination called Day at Sea. The cruise director spent 20 minutes desperately explaining that this was not the name of a hidden tropical island. She genuinely believed the crew was hoarding a secret exotic beach all to themselves. How do these people manage to buy a ticket without knowing what an ocean is? 52. A passenger stormed down to the guest services desk, completely hysterical, because the ocean breeze ruined her expensive salon blowout. She demanded the captain either turn off the wind or steer the ship in a different direction, so her hair would stay perfectly in place for formal night. When the crew gently explained that they do not control the Earth's atmosphere, she threatened to sue the cruise line for emotional distress and the cost of her hairspray. Imagine thinking a 100,000-ton vessel should alter its course for your bangs. 53. Halfway through a round-trip voyage, an older gentleman demanded a 50% refund because he felt the captain was being incredibly lazy. Looking out his window, he noticed the ship was heading back to Miami and accused the crew of driving the vessel in reverse to save time. He firmly believed that massive ocean liners operated exactly like cars and could only travel forward. The engineering team was left totally speechless, trying to explain that ships have two ends and do not just back up across the entire Atlantic Ocean. 54. After hitting the buffet for 5 consecutive days, a guest stepped onto the gym scale and lost his absolute mind. He aggressively accused the captain of manipulating the ship's artificial gravity just to make the passengers feel heavier. His theory was that making people feel overweight would trick them into buying more spa treatments. Bypassing the reality of eating 12 slices of pizza a day, he demanded the engineering team turn down the gravity settings to their normal levels. 55. Panic set in for one heavily confused tourist who locked himself in his bathroom and called security to report a massive crime. Watching the interactive map on his television, he realized the ship had entered international waters and demanded the captain immediately pull over at a border checkpoint. He was genuinely terrified that the ocean police were going to arrest him for not showing his passport to a toll booth in the middle of the sea. It is truly a miracle that some folks survive the stress of their own wild imaginations. It genuinely makes you question how some of these people manage to navigate a grocery store without causing a scene. So here is my question for you. Should cruise lines force passengers to pass a basic common sense test before they are allowed to buy a ticket? Drop your hottest takes in the comments right now. If you enjoyed this absolute madness, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the next wave of ridiculous stories.